My body shape and size has varied massively across my life. I have been everything going from overweight to underweight to ready to step on a bikini stage. And the most frustrating stage for me was definitely this one. I was working in the gym as a PT. I was teaching exercise classes. I was training loads. I was eating clean. Yet I never really felt like I looked like I trained and that all of those hours that I was putting in were showing. So what did I do? Well, alongside studying nutrition, I got a coach myself and I booked myself in for my first ever fitness photo shoot. And in 16 weeks, I transformed my body into this. But despite what you see in these shots, there were parts of my body that I still didn't think had quite got there. Like my butt still looked a bit flat, and my legs, even though they got smaller, they still didn't really have that visible definition that I wanted. Fast forward to now, and this is my day-to-day body. I don't diet, I don't track my food, but it's still improving. And in fact, even in the last 12 months, without having to micromanage anything, I've still noticed that my body is improving and it's looking more like how I've always wanted it to look. And that, my friends, is body recomposition, that process of building muscle and losing body fat over time. And people often get really confused when it comes to this. They know they have to bulk to build muscle. They might know they have to diet or cut to lose body fat, but it's like, which one do I do? What's going to get me that end look? And so they can end up sort of flitting from thing to thing without really having a plan. So in this video, I'm going to make it super clear exactly what you need to do to change your body so that it looks more like how you would want it to look from spending all of those hours in the gym. So let's get into it. You might be thinking, what do I do first? Do I focus on dieting and getting my body fat down? Or do I focus on bulking and building muscle? Well, the answer, like lots of things, is it depends, because all of our bodies are in a different place to begin with. But generally speaking, when women come to me for coaching, they usually fall into a couple of different categories. Now, depending which of these people you are is gonna dictate which path you start to go down first. So first we got category A, which is kind of where I was here. You train regularly, you can lift heavy, you know how to eat healthy, but yet your shape just still doesn't pop in quite the way that you want it to. The answer to that is revealing that, and that can only come from adjusting your diet. Muscle won't show until you've reached a certain body fat level, and many women aren't aware that that actually might require a body fat percentage that's quite a bit lower than the one you currently hold. And unfortunately, we cannot spot reduced body fat, so we cannot choose where that comes off of. So you might want your legs to be leaner, but like for me, for example, for my legs to get lean, my upper body used to have to be very, very lean for me to be able to see that definition. So sometimes it might be, even if you've lost some body fat, to get that look that you want might require losing a bit more. So calorie counting and tracking is going to be your fastest route there. If you are serious about revealing that shape, that is going to involve a fat loss phase, and map it out. Don't just do what a lot of people do, which is, oh, I'm going to try and diet this week. Oh, I'm going to try and bring my calories down this week. Like, have accountability, have structure. And most importantly, during that fat loss phase, you want to be focusing on preserving the muscle mass that you already have. Because this isn't just about weight loss, right? This isn't just about getting your scale weight down. What you are trying to do is reveal that lean shape, right? You want everything to pop. You want to show all of your hard work. When I used to coach bodybuilders and we used to go through this process, there were a couple of principles here that we were really, really focusing on. And the first one was keeping the training intensity high. So in terms of nutrition, we were making sure that yes, we were in a calorie deficit, but we were also using tools like pre-workout nutrition, having refeed days to make sure that those energy levels could stay up. And of course, we were making sure that we were prioritizing protein throughout. Unlike when I used to coach bodybuilders, I don't necessarily apply the diet at all costs mentality. And one of the biggest reasons I stepped away from coaching competitors was I didn't feel comfortable telling people to put their physique before everything else in their lives anymore, because unless you are stepping on a stage and that is a specific goal, you don't have to. So don't get overwhelmed with the things that I'm saying now. You still can live a very normal, balanced life whilst in a calorie deficit. But I think the key part that's there is looking at the amount of weight you have to lose and the amount of time you're going to do it over, and commit to a phase. And obviously the longer period of time you try and do it over, the less of an impact it's going to have on the way you live your day-to-day life. And that is one of the first things that I'm looking at with clients. It's not just going, we're going on a diet, here's your calorie target, off we go. I'm actually looking at, what have you got coming up? How do you like to live your life? What does your relationship with food look like? Where do you usually muck up with diets in the past? Okay, how many calories are you maintaining your body weight on? And all of these factors will go into a calorie deficit. But if you're in that place, fat loss is your first port of call, because you probably have the shape underneath. We just need to make sure that you can stay consistent to a diet for long enough to start to reveal that. So now we have person B, who sort of dabbled in a bit of training. You might have downloaded a few different workout apps, but the training doesn't really have any structure. So maybe you go to your gym classes, jump into circuits, you jump into HIIT workouts, you go to Pilates, but you've never really followed a progressive strength training program. And actually changing your body here, it might not be a body fat issue. It's more likely that your shape isn't changing down to a training issue, because it's not just exercise or working out or going to the gym that builds muscle. It's actually your muscles being challenged over time in a very specific way. Muscles change when they have a reason to adapt, and that reason is a greater stimulus being put upon them. So if you're going to your circuits class or your Pilates every week and you're doing the same exercises over and over again, and the load isn't ever really changing or the demand isn't ever really increasing, that stimulus doesn't change, and as a result your physique doesn't change either. And the way we challenge our muscles over time, the way muscle growth happens, is something known as progressive overload. And you might have heard this term, but there are a lot of things that people get quite wrong about progressive overload, or they misunderstand it. They think progressive overload means I have to lift heavier every week, or I have to add more reps on every week. And yes, absolutely, that's part of it, right? In a structured training program, which is the thing this group needs to make sure they're following, you do want to make sure that by the end of a training cycle, you are pushing yourself to lift a bit heavier than you did at the start of that cycle. You know, you're not just going in and lifting the same weight, doing the same things every week. You do want to make sure that you are increasing the number of repetitions that you can do on a certain exercise. That's absolutely part of progressive overload. But progressive overload can actually mean performing an exercise better over time as well. And by better, I mean a better mind-muscle connection, better movement patterns, starting the exercise with better posture, and actually going through a greater range of motion. Like, all of these things will challenge the muscle to progress, to adapt, which is how muscles grow. We create these little micro tears when we train harder, and they knit back together, which is how a muscle gets bigger and stronger. But that doesn't just mean increasing the loads that you lift every single week. And in fact, a lot of women can end up stalling their own muscle growth through trying to lift with their ego. So trying to lift in a way that means that the weights look good, they're going up, it makes them feel strong, but actually that intensity isn't there, that ability to maintain tension on the muscle throughout all phases of the lift, to be able to actually control the weight using the intended muscle as opposed to just moving the weight, is a skill that gets learned over time. And this is one of the biggest reasons that I get clients who want to change their body shape. I don't just write them a training program, but I encourage them to send me videos of their training so that I can give them feedback on their form. Because there's lots of little things in training that, face value, you might not be doing them wrong, but there might be one or two cues that actually just changes the way you feel everything. Or one week I might say that weight's too heavy for you. Like my client Eve here, for example, she really wanted to improve her front squats to give her quads more stimulus. Well, before we could even do that, we actually had to work on improving her shoulder mobility so that she could hold the bar in the right place and sit deeper into that squat. Other clients, for example, when they're trying to grow glutes, we do some mobility stuff on their hips so that they can get a full contraction out of the glute. It's about learning how your body moves and actually focusing on feeling the intended muscle throughout the movement. Now, let's just say that you are this person and you're listening to this and you're thinking, yeah, that's me. I'll be honest. I go to my classes every week. I sweat my nuts off, but I definitely never really gotten into strength training, or I'm not sure what I need to do with that, but I am still holding more body fat than I want to. Then your fix alongside a progressive structured training program might be a calorie deficit as well. And you very often hear people say, well, hang on a minute, don't you need to be in a maintenance or a surplus to build muscle? And the answer to that is not necessarily. If you are a more experienced trainer, if you think about that stimulus that I'm talking about, right, your muscles have already got used to quite a stimulus. So for example, me, somebody that's been training for 15 years, it's unlikely that I am going to build more muscle whilst I'm in a deficit. Whilst I'm in a deficit, it's all about maintaining what I've got. But let's just say you sit in that category where you're like, do you know what, I've never really given proper program a good crack. Then you might sit in this wonderful category where you can benefit from something called newbie gains, because research shows us that people who are new to training experience a greater stimulus to that than people who are more acclimatized to resistance training. I still work with women that have been training for years, but maybe the form's been a little bit off, or maybe they actually haven't ever come out of that real comfort zone. They haven't actually established what training with intensity or training to failure looks like. And I've seen women that have gone to the gym for years, build muscle whilst in a fat loss phase. If you fall into camp 2, what I would be encouraging you to focus on is writing you a structured progressive training program. I'd be looking at your lifts to make sure that your form is good and you understand what progression looks like each week. And most importantly, that we keep it fun. And with your nutrition, I would either be running you at calorie maintenance, but actually really focusing on the what you're eating. And I'll do a whole nother video on how what you eat contributes to the ability to build muscle. But it's not just about the protein. That is a very important part, but the other micronutrients you eat and also how you recover plays a big role in strength training and progressive overload, because progressive overload is also about knowing when to back off as well as when to push. Not just your diet here, you really have to start training like you mean it. Okay, so let's move on to our person C, who, I bloody hate this term, but our skinny fat person. Everyone knows what it means, right? You're small, you're happy with your size, but you're soft. You're softer than you want to be. What do you need to do in order to get that shapely look? Those round glutes, those toned arms, those cap shoulders. I can tell you what you don't need to do. You do not need to lose weight, which is what people in this camp can often think. Oh, well, if I just lose weight, that will reveal the definition. I just need to lose more weight and then I'll see some abs. You cannot reveal muscle that hasn't been built yet. I mean this as respectfully as possible, but I think sometimes some women are a little bit disillusioned that everybody underneath looks like a bikini competitor. And I can tell you from coaching them, those girls still have a lot of muscle. I hear it all the time. They come to coaching and they send me a picture sometimes like, this is what I want to look like. 9 times out of 10, the women that they're showing me have a lot more muscle mass than they do, and they've underestimated how much muscle that these women actually have. So for anyone in this category, you need to start working on recomping your body by building some muscle, with ditching the notion that you need to keep your calories down to stay small, and getting comfortable with the idea of eating food to perform well. So that doesn't have to be a crazy bulk that you have to go on. You don't have to gain lots of body fat. Like my client Farella here, she wanted to build some muscle, but she was apprehensive because she'd been to another coach before who just kind of put her on a bulk, and actually what she gained was 10 kilos of body fat. You don't have to do it at a super fast rate, but you do need to make sure that your food is of good quality, you're eating balanced meals, you're eating your protein, but most importantly, you're eating enough consistently so that when you show up to the gym, you can train better, because you can't eat your way to muscle, right? We can eat to train better, which is the bit that builds the muscle. And muscle gain is maximized when energy is sufficient, protein intake's high, but training intensity is good and recovery is good. And all of those things are optimized when you're eating to at least your calorie maintenance. So for this group, I am also focusing on progressive training, really looking at the form and quality of the training, you know, actually caring less about how many calories did I eat today? How many steps did I do today? Like, we still look at those things because it's important. I need to make sure you're eating enough. I need to make sure that you're actually not moving too much outside of the gym to inhibit training. But really, it's about flipping that switch in your mentality from it's all about the food to it's all about the training here. From exercising to burn off what you ate earlier or yesterday, it's actually about eating more right now so you can have a better training session tomorrow. So as you can see, some slight differences in the starting point and the priority focus, but all of these groups have something in common, because no matter where your starting point is, body recomposition ultimately comes down to these things: structured, progressive, good quality resistance training, being aware of your energy balance, and the most important piece for all of these groups, whatever your starting point, is time and consistency over time. Because if you are committing to changing your body, you are committing to a lifestyle for the long haul. Everyone you see that has a body that you might deem as desirable, I can guarantee you they haven't done that in a few weeks. Even if their fat loss phase has taken 12, 16 weeks, to get that muscle that has been revealed through that fat loss phase isn't something that happens overnight. So don't fall into that trap where you are trying to solve a lack of muscle problem with a dieting strategy, or you're trying to solve a fat loss problem with random workouts. And it's one of the reasons why, as a coach, I don't just do 6-week meal plans. I don't just do random training plans that I send out, because honestly, they're nice. They make you feel good. They make you feel like you're doing something. But in the long haul, they don't really lead to those changes. That can only come from understanding yourself and a significant time commitment.